bit in here, and then we'll stand outside when we start getting some warm. So I work with the. Are you? Oh, hi. So I work with commercial greenhouse growers. My official job title is floriculture specialist. And so what I do is I work, and my role is basically to support the commercial greenhouse growers out here in Long Island. And by doing that, if they have a question, they call me, and I try to help them figure out what's gone wrong with their crop, or even something as simple as what sort of paperwork you need for your related department. So any sort of thing like that. The other thing I do is called outreach, basically adult education, and I will do things like run conferences, send out newsletters to make sure they're sort of well informed about anything new, anything developments, any changes. I'll also run some conferences to have some educational programs. One of the other things I do with my job is a little bit of research, so we do some testing. We'll go outside and we'll talk a little bit more, but you can see all these plants here. Those I'll be transplanting in a demonstration garden. So these plants, they get shipped to me. Those plants actually came in the mail, believe it or not, in a big box. They're overnighted, sent 2 days. And they're in these little, what we call plugs. And then we'll transplant these to larger pots and then grow them. And these are the kind of pots that you would see at, your local grocery store or garden center. And then once they're kind of happy in the greenhouse, I'll transplant them outside, and I'll show you what I do there. So I do a little bit of, research that'll help answer some questions for growers. We had this tray here. Was from a grower, and it's not quite right. It doesn't look quite right. So the grower called me, and he didn't know what was wrong with it. So I'm just doing a simple, test. I thought it was a fertilizer thing, so I'm using this tray, and I'm applying a lot of fertilizer at a very high rate. On this tray, a normal fertilizer. I'm going to see if the symptoms improve or not. That way I can get back to him and tell him, okay, yes, it was a high, your fertilizer was put on too high of a rate, and he'll know what happens to make sure to prevent that from happening again. So those are the types of things I do. I'll do a little bit of, there's some plant hormones that you can apply to the plants that will help them, say, initiate branching, and you'll get a better, more healthy plant in that sense. Or you can pinch the plant too, and that'll help branch. So I'm testing a couple of different practices here to see what develops the best plant. As you can see, some of them don't work. This would not be a plant that a greenhouse grower would be happy to have this greenhouse. Really strange growth habit. It's yellow, it's not sellable. But you have this plant, and these two are, these three are quite nice. So I could go and tell growers in the report saying, okay, these methods will produce a better plant for you. All right, so let's, you're hot enough yet? So why don't we step outside and just finish talking out there, because it does get a little hot. So this is an entomologist, S.T.E.M, and he's testing different bugs. Yeah, focus. So we'll just step outside. It's a little bit cooler.
Yes, much better.
Right now it's 70 degrees outside, and it was much warmer in the greenhouse. In the summer, it can get up over 100 degrees in the greenhouse easily. 110, 120, it's quite hot. So those little plants that I said I was going to be transplanting later today, ultimately I bring them out here. What happens in greenhouses is there are plant breeders, and they're always improving plants. They make them to have a bigger flower, a more unique flower color, maybe a different growth habit, something that's going to be big and bushy and really vigorous, or something that's cute and small and compact. So there's always making improvements, or even maybe finding some new plants. So they get kind of promoted in magazines and through salesmen, and it's really nice for growers to be able to come and look at them in person, and then not only that, see how they do in our environment here on Long Island, instead of, say, looking at a picture that was taken in Colorado or somewhere with very different environmental conditions than us. So in mid-June, this whole field, this got a little beaten up. You can see there's a bunch of missing pots, fabrics rolled up and blown away. We had some really strong windstorms a few weeks ago, and my field took a bit of a beating. So I've got some work ahead of me to repair and replace this. So this trial will be just a demonstration trial where people can come, growers can see what plants perform well, and it will, potentially affect what plants they choose to grow next season, or promote to their, if they have a garden center, promote to their customers. So that's just a kind of a snippet of what I do. Over there is Mark Bridgen. He talked to the group first thing in the morning. That's a perennial trial, so it's the same concept, except those are plants that live year-round. This trial here are annuals, and then once we get the first really cold weather, they do die. Those will live year-round. So growers, same concept, can go and look at those plants and see how they're performing here on Long Island. And then little other pieces of, some applied research on the other parts of the farm. And then we do have, those fields over there are vegetable. And so we have some vegetable projects and research going on over there. And there is also a small research vineyard in the corner. So we do a little bit of everything here on the site. I guess I'll tell you a little bit about how I got here myself. Do you have any questions? Please hop in, ask questions. All right. So how I got here, I certainly didn't, as a kid, think I'm going to grow up and work with greenhouse growers, or I'm going to grow up and be a floriculture specialist or work in extension, which is what I do. It kind of means that I'm extending any information that I learned from, what's happening in industry or what's happening in research, university research. I make sure that growers have that information. So I didn't actually even know that existed as a choice for a career. So, what had happened with me is I enjoyed, my mom's flower garden. I enjoyed my flowers, vegetable garden. I liked being outside in general. I really enjoyed doing anything outside, hiking, walking, swimming, anything I could do outside, visiting gardens. So I ended up going to school. I worked with environmental science first, and then I ended up working on a farm in college, just being basically a farmhand. But you learn a lot by doing some of that. You learn what that takes to, grow a crop from its, infancy to, either fruit. The farm I worked on was a strawberry blueberry farm. It was also a pick your own Christmas tree farm, so I did a lot of tree pruning. But you'd see what it takes and what a farmer needs to go through to get a crop from start to finish. And I found that fascinating. And then I ended up kind of continuing and going to grad school, and I worked with plant diseases. You guys already know, you haven't seen Margie's group. So Margie's going to talk more about plant diseases. And so I worked with that through school. I worked with interesting crops such as cranberries. And they're actually a native crop. I was in Massachusetts at the time working with cranberries. I also worked with mushrooms. Those little white button mushrooms you see in the grocery store, those are grown in houses. They're called mushroom houses. They're generally not lit. They're dark, they're dank. You grow them in compost. It's a very unique kind of production, so I worked with that for a little while. And then the opportunity arose for me to come here and work with greenhouses on Long Island. My family's in the Northeast, so I thought it sounded like a good fit. I love this job. It's a great place to be. I want to have great coworkers, and every day is different. Every day is absolutely different. There's some days where maybe I'll have 2 or 3 days where I'm in the office and I have to do reports or emails, things like that. There's some days where I go visit greenhouse growers, which let me tell you, in March is awesome. It's cold, it's miserable, but I get to go in a greenhouse and work with flower growers, so that's a really good day. So sometimes I'll go visit greenhouse growers. Sometimes I'll go to meetings and have to give presentations to folks. Sometimes I'm here, like this afternoon. I'm going to be just transplanting those plants and maintaining other things here. So every day is different, and every day is it's good. Growers are a lot of fun to work with. Any questions about me? How I got here? My background? What I do? Plants, flowers. Anyone have a garden? Oh, good. We have a few hands. That's excellent. I always like to see a few. Always.
You don't have any questions?
What school did you go to?
I was at Penn State. I did my undergraduate work at Penn State, and then I did my master's at Penn State, and then I got my doctorate at University of Massachusetts. So it's all over the board.
I have a couple questions.
Yeah.
Alrighty. So, what's the most what are the critical or most important things that matter when you're planting flowers? So terrain, climate.
Yep. So usually I work with greenhouses and they're using, pots and mix, but soil quality, what kind of soil, and light conditions are very important. So if you have a plant that's doesn't tolerate a lot of sun, you don't want to put it in a full sun spot. If you have a plant that really likes full sun, it's not going to be super happy. It'll survive perhaps, but it's not going to be really happy in the shade. So soil and light conditions, I think, are two really important things. And that follows through even if you're using the mix that greenhouse growers use is actually not soil. It's a growing mix, and it's really peat moss and a couple other additives. But the same is true for pots. You have to have a good quality soil to start with.
And are there any fruits or vegetables that are restricted to just certain areas, or like anything that can't grow in New York?
Probably. So there are probably some that if you have, say, something that's really tropical, you might need a longer growing season. Say mango, for example. We wouldn't ever, it would be too cold in the winter for that to survive. Now you could probably perhaps have it in a greenhouse and have it survive and live. But outdoors it would be too cold, and even if the plant were to live and not be killed by the cold temperatures, the season wouldn't be long enough, because it's just started getting warm, and this year it's been cold, so we're a few weeks behind. But if your season isn't long enough, you won't have time for the fruit to develop and mature. So there's a few more tropical species that wouldn't do well. But your standard, things that are common, your tomatoes, your peppers, all of those could be grown in the city for sure. Any other questions about this research farm? So the greenhouse, I just showed you my room. The other rooms are used by other researchers. These two houses, you saw Farouk, our entomologist. We have another entomologist on staff, so they do work with insects and pests that affect greenhouse plants. We have a weed science specialist, and he works with managing weeds. You'll meet Marjorie. Oh, are you here to collect them?
No, it's just here to listen.
Margie will talk about plant diseases. So we try to cover all bases here when we can.
Do you guys put medicine in the soil?
Do we put medicine in the soil? If necessary. There are some products that you could put in to help manage a pathogen. So when necessary, we do. And there's other, making sure that you have good soil so that the plants are just happy and healthy to start with. That does a lot to help keep them happy and healthy and not susceptible to problems, things like that. Yep.
What do you guys do in the winters? You see how you guys have plants. What are the struggles?
In winter, for me personally, or a greenhouse grower, or
Greenhouse
growers? What a greenhouse grower does in the winter, many of them will either be starting, like their seeds. It takes a while. You have to plant a seed. It'll take some weeks and some months for it to grow up to a big plant. So some of them will get a start early doing that. A lot of them, they go on vacation because they're so busy in May and June and April that it's their time off. Unlike a lot of people where summer is sort of their vacation, some people do vacation then. A lot of it is just catch up, and they place their orders, their plant orders. They do a lot of office work and a lot of more indoor type stuff.
Nothing really happens during winters.
I wouldn't say nothing, but yeah, there's less plant growing. Right. Some people do have plants year round, depending on what kind of plants they grow. But yeah.
Did you tell them about the baby vegetables across the street?
I didn't tell them about baby vegetables across the street. Yeah. This greenhouse over here, they grow what they call microgreens. Have you ever eaten little sprouts, alfalfa sprouts or something? Yeah. So that's sort of what they're doing, but it's not just alfalfa. They grow a really wide range of crops, little mini mustards and little mini oregano, all different types of spices. And it's really sold a lot of times put on top of fancy restaurant. It's such a unique sort of product line and market that they have, but it's very, very different. So their crops aren't a traditional plant the flower, grow the flower. It's like a little seedling. It grows up just about this big, and then they sell it. So some of their crops are done in 5 days. Some take 2 weeks. Oh, you're ringing.